Hi everybody, this is Jacques here from New Jack Entertainment. Today we're just going to do a quick stream, mostly just to show you guys a few things, how to do what I do in my workflow for creating our world. You can ask a few questions about atavism if you're interested, to ask some questions. But one thing to remember, I'm not so much of a programmer, so when it comes to technical questions, I'm not really a good person to ask those for. Jean is one of our programmers, he's still in hospital. Zooms is also a programmer that's actually on holiday, so we have a few people out at the moment. But they'll be back soon. I think in next week they'll be back. We also have version 2.4 ready for test release now, which will be going out, hoping in this week. It ran a bit late, but it seems to be ready for us to send out to the testers to test. 2.4 will include Unity 5 compatibility totally, so you guys won't have any problems with bringing it into Unity 5 then. One of the things we want to do, or what I want to do for the next release, which is for the end of the month, is I want to get us using the new Viking Island as a demo scene instead of the one that we currently have, which is the islands. Let me just open this up quickly, give you guys a bit of a view of how that looks. Let's see, if you guys haven't seen it yet, I'll just make a quick post here. It shows you how the Viking Island actually looks for Unity. It's like a little Viking village. And what we want to do, there's a link there in the chat. So I hope you guys can hear me. I'm not even sure if you guys can hear me properly. That link there in the chat, that's just a video of the little Viking town that we want to put in a demo, which is from Unity. I think it makes a perfect little demo for a MMO. And what we want to do is, with the next release for Atavism, is add in at least one sample of everything, like a quest, a dialogue, some mobs and stuff like that, some characters and so on, which will work with that setting of the Viking Island. So that when you start, and some UI as well, so when you guys get it, bring it in, especially new people, they have a sample of everything right there to see. And it also incorporates the new effects and stuff, shaders and so on, and works well with it. That comes with Unity 5 now. So what I wanted to show today is I'm going to start off with showing you guys a little bit of my workflow that I do for creating a world. Like I said, this isn't so much a atavism Twitch show and tell thing, but more just to help some new people that's using Unity and so on to create their worlds and maybe make it look a little bit better than it looks currently. My way isn't, I wouldn't say that what I'm doing is maybe the best way to do anything. I mean, there's a lot of other people that are a little bit more skilled than me, most probably in Unity. But I think it's a bit of a guide to help out a little bit. There might be other ways that other people can do stuff that's much shorter shortcuts and so on. But this is just how I develop our world for our games and so on. Yeah, I got no ads coming up my side, so maybe Twitch wants to make some more money out of us. So let me start off with first. What I wanted to show you guys is first thing. What I usually do is, there you could see a little terrain. This is in Unity. This is a scene. So what I'll do, I'll just zoom in. This is a little area that I'm busy working on. Let's click on there. Let me do this quickly. So a few things to note here is since Unity 5 is so much stronger right now, you know, you can get more stuff in your world and so on. This map here is a 4K by 4K map that I'm working on. Zoom in there. Oops. And with Unity, the grass and so on is just amazing that they have. You can see there, you know, it really does some nice grass effects and so on. Give me a sec here, so make sure I can see everything. So this is a little area that I'm working on. Usually what I do is I decide what I wanted to do, and then I build from there. This area is going to be like a little PvP map that we're working on. The stuff that we're using, what I'm using for this, you'll see the trees. These are all speed tree trees. Since Unity 5 comes with speed tree, I just love this. The reason I like it so much is the trees really look nice, you know, and you can get different versions of it. And the grass that Unity puts in now, you know, you can make it nice and thick, so it looks very natural. And then the other thing that I used with this setup of my terrain, usually from now on, also because Unity 5 is so strong, we can add that in, is a relief terrain pack system. So what it does, it creates, like, this looks like rock if you look here nicely, because they're all bumped out and so on, but they actually is not really rock. It's just a texture that's put on a flat terrain piece here, so it looks very natural. If I go here to the path, you can see it a little bit more. You can see here the needles and stuff. The other nice thing about Relief Terrain Pack, it doesn't do the normal terrain that Unity does, where it blends the stuff by fading it. You can see here it actually looks natural because it breaks it down in sections. So when you have two textures that you're blending together, it will look like it's actually more natural than just a fade in and out, like most engines and stuff do, you know, most games and so on. So how I usually start is I start with World Machine. Let me just shrink this, and I'll show you guys here. So this is a World Machine. I don't know if many of you guys know World Machine really and so on. So this is what I would start with. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on how to use these packages. There's a lot of tutorials out there, but other people use different packages. You know, depends on what you want to use. I like World Machine, so I start off with World Machine, and then we go from there. I build my little island or terrain or whatever you want to do. If you want to do islands, you can make islands or whatever. It gives you a nice, if you look here, it gives you a nice natural look here. And then I export the maps from here. Then I import them into Unity. Let me just paste this. I'll put this link in the chat as well for you guys, if you want to have a look at that. So then we bring it into Unity, into the terrain. Open this up. In Unity, you will see. Let me see if I can grab this terrain here. I can show you guys. Oh, where did I go with this terrain now? So in the inspector, here's the inspector here. When you bring in your height maps and so on, you just click on your settings, just for those that don't know really. And you'll see here, after you've created a raw height map file from World Machine, you're just bringing in, say, import. And you just import the height map here, and it'll open up some more details, and then you can just bring it in. This map that I have here that you see I'm using, that's a 4K by 4K map. So that's a little area. Then I just add my grasses and stuff like that. You know. Other thing to note too is when you do your settings here for your grass and stuff, like I increase my detail to the max, but you can make it depending on what computer you have and what frame rate you have. You know, you might make it a little bit less. You know, if it's better on your frame rate stuff. I don't use these trees, I don't plant them with using the terrain painter. I actually do them manually. That's just, I just like the freedom of creativity to place stuff down where it looks nice. I just don't want to just paint and do it quick thing. And then you can see we made our detail resolution pretty big, so it will make it nice and thick, and a detail region per pixel is 16. So that's the basic settings that I use for this map here. Give you guys an idea. Your pixel error. So a lot of people, when you bring in a terrain, sometimes if your pixel error is set to 1, your draw calls that you do, which you can see, if I can just move this away. No, it's not in gizmos. It'll be. So I'd bring this one here. See if it'll drag it. Computer's so slow. Actually, let me do this. So you bring out your game view, and I'll drag my inspector back. So you bring out the game view panel. This is your game view. Then when you play, you'll see this. You'll see up here it says stats. So if you click that, this gives you a lot of detail about what's been drawn in your game when you're playing, what your frame rate is, and stuff like that. The biggest thing to look at is these things here. Batches and batch safe. These are your draw calls. I mean, sorry, draw calls. These are your shadow draw calls here. So you can set your shadow distance in your settings under editor, but so you don't want to go too far with your shadows, but you still want to see it a little bit further. But the draw calls is the biggest thing. Now, if you have your where I set there in inspector, if you have these pixel errors set to 1, your amount of draw calls is going to go up to like 6,000-7,000, and your frame rate is going to drop to like 10. You know, so it's good to put it like 20. And what it does is it calculates the terrain. When it draws a terrain, that's where this is just my knowledge, I think I know. So when it draws a terrain in the distance, it doesn't use the exact height map. You know, it makes it less draw calls, like less poly counts and stuff like that, and closer it does it. So the distance that you put your pixel error in, that's how much accurate it is with the height map. And it makes a huge difference. If you go to like 20 pixel errors, you won't see really any difference in the terrain, but your amount of draw calls you can get on terrain goes from 5,000 to maybe 100, 200. So that's a good way to make sure that you keep your frame rates high, is to make sure you add that in. Let me just see if I can move this back here. I think we have it set to record these things. I hope so. Last time I set it to make sure it records every time we broadcast. So I think this will be recorded. Let me just make double sure. Give me 1 sec. I can tell you now. Just want to go check our settings quickly. This takes a bit of time. Computer's got so many things open. I don't want to open stuff while I'm busy doing it. I just got it all lined up. So let's see. Yeah. So it will automatically archive the broadcast, so you can come back later if you want to and have a look at it later on. So don't worry about it if you have to go. Okay, so that's the start of our workflow. So we bring in our height maps. Once we bring it in, let me just move this puppy out here. So we bring our height maps, we start working on our scene. The one thing to make sure is when you create a new scene, you must have all the components that's on the main camera for Atavism to work with it. You have to set up your spawning points in your new scene. You have to add the instance of the scene to the editor, to Atavism, so it has it. And then you can either use if you're admin, you can use the goto command to go to that instance, or you can actually go directly to it. If you want to use the main scene, which is your first scene already set up, with your own stuff, all you have to do is delete everything except the main camera. The main camera has got all the components that's needed there. So that and the light, you can leave the light in there. And then just put your terrain down or whatever you want to put down there. And then basically make sure that your spawning point where it spawns originally is set above the ground, so that when you spawn you'll go on the ground, or you can reset the spawning point to your own point where you want to set it. So next thing we want to look at is I want to show you guys is back to the scene here. So once I get the, let me just zoom out here. Get the maps going and so on. You know, it'll be something like this. What I do is when I bring it in, just to get this textured, just a quick basic texturing, I use Terrain Composer actually, and then I put it on a slope texture. So what it does is generates a texture for slope. So it looks at what the slope is, and then it generates the textures pre-generated automatically onto the terrain. So you can see like this mountains, this is all pre-generated. That just gives you a starting point for texturing. That's, I mean, people use it, Terrain Composer, and texture everything. You know, you can fiddle with it a lot, but like I say, I like doing stuff manually. Just gives me a little bit more of artistic control of it. The other thing too, if I do this, that I find a lot of people don't think of, like if I turn the fog off, you know, now you can see it looks like this. A lot of people don't think of using fog so much in their games, and fog really makes a huge difference. So you look at this here, you can see far, but it doesn't look that good at all, right? So once I turn fog on, you know, suddenly it gives it some atmosphere. It actually makes a big difference, right? And it depends on what type of fog you use. You don't want to have it too thick, too close, but you also want to use the fog to hide stuff at a certain distance. That's what fog's been used for, right? So if I go back to this, for instance, where I start doing the trees and stuff, you know, grass only, a simple example of this is going to be your grass. So grass only renders a certain distance, and that's it. That's the maximum you can render it. Where's this? Let's do this quick. Select something. Sometimes you want to move around in the terrain, it can be a bit of a pain. So you just select the object and press F, and then it'll zoom you in to that object. And that way I zoom myself around the area without even scrolling around. So if you see here, when the fog is off, you can see there the grass isn't rendered back there at the distance. So if I don't have fog, if I have my fog on, I want to make sure that my fog just basically starts covering that area which doesn't get rendered. So you don't see, as you're running, you don't see the grass popping up, or if you have your trees and stuff on LOD levels, you don't see them popping up. You know, the fog hides it for you basically, so it looks much better when you're running around and stuff like that. So that's other very important thing to remember, right, is make use of your fog and your lighting and stuff, right? So the next thing I do is also, when I bring in a terrain, I start looking at the different textures. For instance, let me just zoom in here. And then what you want to do is you want to have textures that complement each other basically, right? So you see here, I got this basic rock from one of the asset packs, the big environment pack, I think, or no, it's medieval pack from K9, and his rock that he had was a little bit very light, and then I have these other textures on the terrain, you know, and so what I did is some of them were very light, like this grass texture I had, it was very light, so I took it into Photoshop, took down the vibrance of it, you know, so it doesn't, so it's not standing out as much. And with the rock, I changed the material color, so it made it a little bit of a gray, so it's a little bit darker. So when you look at it, you know, it looks like it's part of the ground. It complements each other much easier, and it doesn't look like you just placed something down there. You know, it just gives that more natural look to it. If I go here, you can see Like if you look there, right, just gives it that more natural look. And then once again, with Relief Terrain Pack, it just looks really nice, I think, when you paint around it and so on. And then with the needles, you know, it makes the terrain look good. So now this is where I'll show you guys. I start off with something like this, and a lot of people will find this a lot of work, but I like doing, you know, putting my own personal touch to stuff, you know, and it might be a little bit of work, but in the long run, you know, it's well worth it when you end up having something that looks good. And then I start painting on the terrain. You'll see I use like this one, this texture is all about the textures that you use. Oh, this thing is full of nonsense here. So what I do is, if we go closer here, this is the grass texture you started off with, and I use the needles texture. So I'll do that quickly. I'll show you guys how I do that actually. So I'll select a paintbrush. I'll usually make it the smallest, and I make the opacity very light and strength. So you see this is my smallest I can go with the brush. And then I select, say I start off with my needles, which is my base one, and I'll just do like very light, like little arches here, just making here and there, making thick areas, you know, just start filling it up like that, just to give it a bit of variety and so on. You know, a lot of people think this takes a hell of a long time, which it does. It does take a bit of time, but I think it looks very nice. You know, you could do this and most probably with just normal files and stuff. Just want to read this quick comment here about the mobs. So when you do the starting point, the reason why we start, I think we coded it before to start them a little bit higher on the ground than where your starting point was. For the biggest reason was we didn't have a server-side collision and server-side knowledge of the terrain and stuff in yet, right? Which is coming in the next release, which is end of April. So we to fix up a few problems, because every now and then the mobs used to spawn, and they would spawn underneath the terrain, because if you put it on the exact height, you know, for whatever reason with Unity, sometimes if it's on a slope or something, it doesn't get the exact height of the terrain where it collides with, so the mob will actually spawn under the ground and fall away. So we made it so that they spawn a little bit above the ground and then they fall to the ground, so they land and collide with the ground. But now with the new nav mesh system and the server knowing exactly where the terrain everything is, yeah, where all that stuff is, you know, when the next update comes, then that will be fixed, because now the server knows exactly where everything is on the terrain, you know, where the mobs are spawning, where their position is precisely and stuff like that. So that will be all fixed with the next update. But like I say, that was we just coded that in just as a precaution, depending on the terrain and stuff and where it gets placed and stuff like that. So you'll see I'm just painting a little bit of the terrain here, you know, and if you look there, that looks much more natural, right? And then here and there, what I'll do is I'll throw in, like if I do the rock, you'll see it just popping up here. Like Relief Terrain Pack's really good with the new Unity. So it gives that natural terrain look, and it looks like the needles are in between the rock sections. And then I'll just grab a tree or two. If I just go to trees here, I'll show you guys. So what I did is with these trees are all from SpeedTree, but I found that some of their texture maps are 2048 sizes. So you definitely have to look at a few things when you want to optimize stuff. You don't want to use 2048 texture sizes for just tree textures and stuff like that. So you want to make sure your compressions are much lower, you know, so that you can save on RAM and stuff like that. The other thing I also noticed on SpeedTree is they have a rigid body, and I think rigid body is very resource intensive. So I just changed that and took it away, because you don't need a rigid body on these SpeedTree trees and stuff like that. You just need a collider on them, right? I mean, I just put a normal collider on mine. And also some of them come with a bunch of colliders. I just have one with the trees. You don't need to have exact colliding and stuff like that. Like those are all overkill, I think, on some of these things. All these are little things that you want to look at when you do your things, you know. Also with, say for instance, these rocks and stuff that I put in, you know, and SpeedTree comes already with a LOD group system working. But with rocks and any props you put in there, you have to make sure you put a LOD group on it. Because what happens is, because it's an MMO, it's much big, you know, you want to save everywhere you can. If you move a certain distance away from an object, you want it to disappear if you can't see it anymore, right? So if you put on a LOD group onto the rocks, for instance, you know, when it reaches the lowest level of LOD, they actually disappear. So they're not, the mesh isn't rendered in the game engine itself. So what I'll do then is, once I've painted this terrain here, right, I grab a trees. So I grab some of my trees here. Just go here quickly. And then I'll just drag some trees in. So you'll see here I got a tree that I'm just dragging in. So I'll place one here. I'll sometimes just shrink it a little bit lower, because sometimes, depending on the slope, if it's on a high slope, the tree gets placed automatically, even with the tree painter. That's why I also like doing this and not with the tree painter. It's hard to make the trees go into the ground where it's on a high slope, so you end up seeing underneath the tree which is empty, which is it doesn't look very professional and good at all. So I'll just grab a few trees. I'll put some trees down here, like one or two here, right? And then you can see the trees are there. Oh, okay, I don't know, that's why they wanted rigid bodies. Yeah, well, you know, you can have, one thing I always say to people, you know, you can have something in a game, you know, that looks like a movie, right? It looks like it's realistic, it's a real movie and stuff, but it comes at a cost. Anything in the game comes at a frame rate cost. So basically, you know, you have to draw the line somewhere on your quality that you're putting out, you know, and how good it's going to look, and what frame rate, you know, if it's going to be playable for people to play with, right? Sometimes if you make something look too good, you know, your playability is like useless, because people can't really play it, you know, they just don't have the machines to run it. So yeah, so back to where we were, right? So I did this, I placed the trees down, I placed a few trees here and there, right? You can see here, I did the rocks, I put some rocks halfway in and stuff like that. Like this is actually a full mesh. I just move them in here, and, you know, it looks a little bit more natural and stuff like that for the hills and so on. And that's how I build my world up with that. And then once I've done all this, then I go to the grass. Let me just grab one here, zoom in here. And then once again I grab the terrain here, and now I'm gonna paint some grass. So I set up my grass on the terrain painting, and let me just see, got some nice grass here. These are actually SpeedTree grass, but I just use it as a normal grass thing. So I have my settings at full on, and then I paint some grass everywhere here and there, right? And then I have the same grass set with different heights, you know. So I have the same grass, second layer that's set at the lower height, and then I paint a second layer over this that makes it really thick, if you can see there. But also it makes it like you have higher grass and lower grass sections now that looks more natural. And then at some places where there's rock, what I'll do is I'll take my opacity and target strength down, and I'll just paint one or two there where there's rock, and even that makes it look more natural, because grass naturally doesn't grow thick on rock, you know. Like I say, all these things is done by hand, you know, but for me it gives it the more realistic effect than doing it procedurally and just plonking through it, you know. I think people definitely see the difference to it, you know. And then I paint a little bit of more detail in here. Like this is just the first pass. There's only like three things I've put on this whole terrain here, which is two pieces of grass, the same, and then there's brown, and it gives it a nice little natural look to it. So once this is done, I'll quickly show you guys. Let me just save this. I'll show you how it looks in game once you log in and play a bit. Let's see if I don't crash. So I'll just move this out of the way quickly. And let me just go to my right scene, the login scene. So this is actually going to log right into using Atavism into the world. Put this here. So, I mean, these are all little tips, it's not so much to do with Atavism itself, but these are little tips that you can use to build your world and stuff like that. That are pretty important stuff, I think. And a lot of people don't think of these things actually so much. So just while we wait for that to log in, I just want to show you guys quick links to the assets that I use. So I use World Machine to create my height maps. I then use Bring It In. I use Terrain Composer to do a quick slope texture on the terrain, so I have some base textures to work with. I make sure I add the Relief Terrain Pack into it because it works with Terrain Composer. And also you can use Terrain Composer if you want to make bigger maps, like say 20 or 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. You can use Terrain World Machine to what it does. If you get the higher version of it, you can save tiles of it. So you can make a big map, save them in different tile sizes of say 2K by 2K or 4K by 4K, then bring them into your world with World Machine, Terrain Composer. You bring it into Unity with Terrain Composer. You can put these tiles next to each other. They automatically tile up in Terrain Composer, and then you can paint them and you can make massive worlds with that. So that's the other way people do it. So let's see. So while we wait, if you guys have any questions on the terrain stuff or so on, just shoot a question out and I'll be happy to answer it. So this one here, this is a Terrain Composer. That's a Terrain Composer. Let me just see here. And this one here is Relief Terrain Pack. Now in Unity 4, well, I couldn't use Relief Terrain Pack because it was just it was just killing the frame rates. But in Unity 5, it seems to be pretty good. And that's a Relief Terrain Pack. So let's just see what's going on. I don't know why in Unity 5 every time I want to play after I did a lot of editing on the terrain and stuff, it takes forever to build it. It just goes very slow for whatever reason. So I'll just have to restart it quickly and then I'll log into the game and show you guys how it looks when you run around in it. Oh, well, wait. Do you guys have any questions about anything? I think in the next Twitch stream that we're gonna have will be in 2 weeks' time, and by then we will. Those were all handmade, actually. That's just painted on. So what we do is for our paths, I just take a small brush and I just paint it with a texture that we used for paths, and they look pretty good. And then you just have to play around with your terrain. You know, sometimes like paths usually are lower, and then terrain next to it is a little bit bumpier or higher. So you just raise the terrain a little bit up next to your paths. It makes them look more natural. So just yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things that you can use, you know, to make stuff quick and easy. Yeah, it's all up to depending on what you want to do, how you want to design your world. You know, like a lot of people find it very like it takes a bit of time for you to place your trees down and do everything by manual painting stuff. You know, but it's all preference, right? Like for me, to get it to look decent, you can even use world terrain composer, you know, and place down trees and stuff and place down rocks and so on, you know. But you're gonna play so long around with it to get the perfect situation to make it look really good that you just well could have done it manually. That's how I feel sometimes. So let me just close this. So this is the little scene I had. This is my login scene, because this is like a little desert area. So you have everything going there. I have a character that I created already. Now this is still the old Yuma system. Like I say, we got 2.4 ready now with new Yuma and everything, but I haven't got it yet in my hands to test and so on to show you guys. But this will give you an idea how it looks. So I just created this character. Just gonna log into there. Takes a little bit longer, seeing I'm streaming. Got a few things open, yeah. So there we go. We logged into the world. What you'll see is the UI here. All I did is with the current UI that comes with Atavism. This is the exact current UI. I just added a few icons and I just made the UI works on a what is it called? It's a skin. So I just changed the skin textures on the skins. You know, this is Atavism's standard UI, but just with a few modifications on the skins, which is just the texture thing. Just the bags and so on. Quests. Like this is something easily you guys can do to change the textures. This is a little area here. This is the path here. right? So you see the nice thing about the trees and stuff, they move with all the branches move. That's a nice thing about speed trees. All their branches moves individually, where other trees that comes with other packages, they don't actually do that. You know, that's why we went with that. The other nice thing about, if you can see at a distance, that's why I was talking about the fog. You can see there's no grass up there, but it's very hard to see it with the fog set up. So this is a nice distance you can do without noticing that, you know, it doesn't draw the grass everywhere. And also, other thing you would notice is the grass gets darker with the new Unity. The further you go away, the darker the grass gets. It looks much natural, and then close up, it's like yellow. If I run around here, you'll see as I run, the grass in front of me becomes more yellow, and the other grass changes. Actually, I think I'm running on this is not even highest what you call it level. Let me switch this to graphic quality. So project settings, quality. So I'm gonna go on fantastic. So this is the best setting that you can be on it. So this is the highest quality settings. Now you can see the trees much further and stuff like that. And that's what I mean, you know, it looks very natural and stuff like that, I think. And what's nice about SpeedTree, they have the LOD stuff. So those trees down there, these are manually placed trees, but even though it's manually placed, those ones down there, they are LOD'd, and they go into, they use billboards and so on. And here's a nice example of the rock, so you can see there. I love the relief terrain pack, it's really good with the rock. And we just go down to this little area that I showed you guys. So one thing is also to make sure when you do your grass, you know, you can make it low grass and stuff, it's all preferences, but you know, to make something look fuller, what I did is the shorter grass, I didn't put that on billboard. I put that on regular, and I mean a longer grass, and a shorter grass I put that on billboard. So the shorter grass follows the camera the whole time, where the longer ones don't. So it also does a natural look because you mix it up a little bit. So this is a little area that's not painted grass on yet, so it'll give you a good idea. And just mixing it up like this, you know, gives it a more natural look, I think. It's pretty much what World of Warcraft does with their terrains too. You know, if you look at their stuff, they paint little line stuff in it to make it look different. Let's go down here. And that's a nice little view there. So this is without grass, and even without grass, it, you know, once you've painted it a little bit, you know, it doesn't look too bad either. This is where we actually was working in just now. So this is the trees we planted down, and then I did the grass down here, in this little corner here. And then I'll quickly show you guys. I'm busy doing like a little canyon here. So these are a little path that goes down here. This is a little beach area here. And then we got a little canyon here with some water. This is Unity water flowing here. So it does give a nice little feel to it. Nice little look to it. Nice reflections and so on. It's a little bridge that goes over. So we just go up here. I do the same when I paint my rocks, you know, when you have like steep hills, you do a little bit of rock painting and you just mix it all up. It looks much better, I think. Let's get up here. So this is a little breach area. I actually do like Unity's water, and there's a few other water packages you can use, like Samuna water and so on. You know, depending on what you want to do. We use Samuna water for our islands where we have ocean and stuff like that, because it has infinite ocean on it. This is a little camp area, yeah. And once you put some sound like trees moving and birds chirping and stuff like that, this feels very natural. When you're building a place, it's all about making it full, feel like it's very full, like it's got a lot of things in it that makes it look realistic and so on. But so biggest thing is to remember is to make sure that you don't fill it up too much that it kills your frame rate, but you also make it have that feeling that that's pretty full. You know, so by raising your terrain a little bit, making the hills, and instead of a flat surface, you know, we raise the terrain a little bit, and all of a sudden you can't see beyond the little hill, you know, so now it feels a little bit more fuller. Then when you look down the area which isn't raised, you know, it's like a huge open space that doesn't feel like it's full unless you put a lot of things in it, like trees and so on. So that's basically what I wanted to show you guys today. I know it's got not a lot to do with Atavism itself, but you know, it's always nice to know a few things. You know, how people make their terrains and stuff look good and so on. You know, especially when you're building MMO, that I think it's some are good ideas. Maybe if you guys want to use it, or if you have your own, that's all fine. If you guys have any other questions, just if you want to, just plonk them in the chat, and I can see if I can answer them. Operating system on this one, it depends on which one you want to use. You can use different ones. You can use Linux or you can use Windows. The one I'm running on and the ones that we're doing on our hosting service that we're selling is Linux. Memory usage and CPU usage is Atavism is very low. Like it's not very heavy on both of those. But we're doing testing with the new version that's coming out right now, so I can't really give you exact numbers because with the nav mesh it does change the amount of CPU and memory usage, right? Because the server has the nav mesh on its side, and now all of a sudden it has to make sure that it knows where everything is running and everybody is at the moment, so it changes the amount of use. But it still won't be a big footprint, I think. For 3D sound, whatever Unity has is exactly what Atavism has. Like Atavism is just the server side of stuff. It really doesn't control like your environment so much, like the trees. Everything I showed you today really doesn't have anything to do with Atavism. It's such. It's more like your client and Unity. So 3D sound, you can whatever Unity's sound system works with, you get the exact same thing on a client when you're playing around with it, right? So of course you're building it out. Same with platforms that you can export to. You can export to all the platforms because once again, it's whatever Unity does is Atavism can do basically. Nice thing about Unity, and I haven't tested it myself yet totally, but Unity 5 comes out with Oculus Rift, which I think does also work with Atavism. So you know you can even do the Oculus Rift system with Atavism as well. Any other questions? we were planning to put in zones. So basically what it is at the moment, the next update will have the nav mesh system. And the nav mesh system, what it does is in Unity you would build your nav mesh. Say like I'll have this terrain in my editor, and I'll click a little button on the Atomsm editor, you know, and it'll build a nav mesh for us, depending on your terrain and stuff. So it knows where mobs can walk and so on, you know, where there's obstacles in the world and so on. And then, you know, that nav mesh gets loaded up onto the server, and then the server knows exactly where all these things are. So that's how you set collision, you know, for the nav mesh. For zone collision, I just want to make sure here. So you're looking at AI triggers and stuff like that. So say for instance, are you meaning something where you walk into an area and then the AI spawns, or do you mean, I'm not totally sure what you mean with AI triggers. Because currently what what Atomsm does is it works on a octree system. So what it does, it calculates, it has sections, or you could say zones, that it calculates how many mobs it can send information to the client. Now it doesn't know that if the client, I mean, you can have a client that's running on a very slow computer and it can't handle X amount of mobs, or you can have a client that runs on a very fast computer and it can handle X amount of mobs or objects that's in it, right? So it's very hard to calculate from the server side what you know what is based on that. But it works on how much information gets sent to the client and back to the server. So the server knows, you can set it yourself the amounts that you want, but it works on an octree system. So what happens is, if you have, say you have 100 mobs in an area, you know, the server knows that it can handle 100 mobs sending messages to the client and back. So it basically renders the 100 mobs. But say for instance the server can't handle the messages, then it'll break those 100 mobs into different sections, like smaller little chunks or blocks. And then as you're running and you're entering into a new chunk or block, you know, it'll render these mobs in here. It's like an LOD system, and then it'll remove the other ones that you can't see, basically. So I think we've tested it with players. It's hard to say exact amount of players we've tested, because you actually have to have real players in the game to test it with, and we only have so many people we can put in the game, right? So we can't say we've tested it with 1,000 or 10,000 players, because we don't have that many people that can go and do the testing for us, basically, right? But we've tested it with NPCs and mobs and stuff, and I think we've had where it was in an area you could go up to like 2,000 to 3,000 NPCs that you're doing in an area. Now our next update we'll be doing later on will be where the server, these aren't things that's got to do so much with the client as such, it's got more to do with the server sending messages to and from the client, right? So you can only send so many messages before the server gets lag, and that's what the server does. Now lag on client side has got to do with how many meshes and stuff you have in your scene. Like if you have a scene with millions of meshes and stuff, it doesn't matter how good the server is. You know, the server might have absolutely no lag, but the client will have a lot of lag because it's rendering everything. It's all about rendering, right? So when you go and build your world, you have to make sure you optimize things. That's why I said you have to make sure that you put LOD groups on your objects and stuff like that, and make sure your texture sizes aren't too big. You know, it's all about optimizing your scene, basically. What you can get with the server machine is when you have a lot of people connecting to it, sending a lot of messages to the server. So what we'll be doing is, on the next update or two that's coming, is we're going to have server handover. So what happens is the server machine, the actual machine, if it starts feeling that it's got too many players or messages coming in and out from it, and it's getting bogged down, you know, you can set a system limit in, and it will hand over the information to a new machine, actual machine. So you know, it can grow or it can get smaller, like, you know, like if you set it up correctly. So when you have a lot of players in your game running around, you know, a lot of information coming down, a machine can't handle it anymore. It will basically hand some of that information over to another machine and split it up, and it will keep doing that. That's the system that we're going to be implementing in the next 2 to 3 months. I don't know if that answers the question you asked about the number of players and so on. But I mean, once again, seeing the amount of players, a lot of people get confused. Seeing the amount of players in an area like where I'm standing, uh, you know, you could have 10 billion players there, but if their meshes are just a little cube, that will be fine. But if their meshes are like this character here, which has a certain amount of resources it uses to render, that won't work. Your client will just bomb out, right? Yeah, you can, with our system, you will be able to set tolerances, levels, and so on, right? Like everything we try and do with Atavism, we make it for developers to customize, right? Once again, you would want, like I said, with the cubes, right? If you're making a game that is just cubes, you wouldn't mind if there was like 1,000 players in one little area that I'm looking at right now. But if you're making a game that's it's got like full character and gear and stuff, and it's like 50,000 polygons, you don't want that amount of players in there. So you'll be able to set it, how much you want to spawn in there and stuff like that. So with the Octree system right now, you can set how much mobs and stuff you want to spawn in a certain area of the Octree. So say you want to have maximum 50 50 mobs spawning in an Octree. So what it does is when it divides it up, say you have in this area, say you have 500 mobs you place down. You will only see 50 at a time because you set your Octree system to be 50. So that's all it will render basically, and it'll keep splitting it up smaller and smaller chunks depending on where the mobs are, right, and where you are, and how many players is there. Well, if you say player versus enemies for collusion, right? So the server knows, with the new update, the server will know exactly where a mob is, already knows exactly where a player is. So if you're running into another player, you can set collision on it, but the server will know that you're at the same point, right? The server doesn't say, okay, you're colliding with another player, right? The server says there's two players, and on the client you see you colliding with another player. That's how it works. And with the current version, with mobs, the thing is the server doesn't know that there's a tree, for instance, standing right there, right? So if a mob is spawned on the other side of the tree and it starts running towards you, on the client side it will collide with the tree because it's got a collider on it. But on the server side, the server still thinks it's running right through the tree because the server's got no idea about the tree standing there. So with the new update, the server will know there's a collider there, there's a tree there, so the mob will actually go around the tree, and you will know, the server will know that the mob has gone around it. Or if it gets stuck behind a tree, the server will know that the mob is still behind the tree. It's not by you as a client, as a player. Also, the server will know now where the mobs are. So when it runs up to a player to attack it, before you would see in the older version or current version we have of Atavism, the mobs would sometimes come right into the player, right on them. Where now with the new nav mesh system, the server knowing where the mob is, you can set the distance you want it to stop from the player when it's attacking you. And it can do other things too, like we can bring in now that we know where the mobs and stuff is. If you're, say for instance, as a player casting a spell, we can do area effect damages and stuff like that, because you know exactly at what position the mobs is at the moment. So when you cast that spell to, say, throw a hand grenade or whatever, or a spell on the ground, and you want to destroy like the amount of mobs that's in that area, the server will know that with the new nav mesh system. So it will actually do damage to them. Does that explain the enemies example you're asking about? Any other questions? I'll just show you guys. This is a little mining area. I'll just go in here quickly. This actually goes. This creates an instance and goes into a mining cave. So you guys look at this. This is actually this fences and stuff here. This is actually a pack from the asset store. And all I did is I changed the colors and stuff. So you know, a lot of people say, oh, you know, asset store packages and stuff. But even this here, right? This is from the asset store. But you can be a little bit creative with your assets. You don't have to put them in the game right like that. You can also change the coloring and stuff on them a little bit, right? So this is going to be a little mining camp that goes in. And I put an entrance level here of one of the assets from the asset store, and then I build it up with rocks and stuff like that. And you can actually go and you go into here and you click on that door and you go into an instance of it. Well, crafting system, you know, we have the standard one that's like the Minecraft type of one. You know, you can also, I think at this point, you can also change that to the same crafting system that's for like World of Warcraft, where you click an item and you build it and so on. You know, but it's very hard to put all the different systems in because we don't know what systems there is, right? What people want and so on. But you know, we add in as much as we can, you know, in the future. But it's also open, like we have with the package. You know, you can code your own systems too if you really wanted to, right? So you know, it's a very versatile thing. I think at the moment there's some flies flying here. At the moment we have like the two, like the standard World of Warcraft one where you just have your thing that you click and then you can craft it. You know, then we have one that's skill based where you link it to a skill and you can craft things only from skill. And then you have something like Minecraft where you can just put the stuff in the blocks, you know, and just if you have the resources, you place them in the blocks and you can craft it. So there's a few versions you can use, right? And those are easily modified to make something of your own too. I like coming down the hill here. It looks pretty cool down the hill. Any other questions? The world does look really nice once it gets filled up a little bit. Yeah, it'd be nice once I finish doing the trees up here. It makes such a huge difference to make something look natural as when you have trees going beyond what you can see. Like down there, you can barely see them, but they are there. The day-night one, that was the 4.2, I mean 4.3 version, 2.3 version of Atavism that somebody had the free version of day-night. He said he's not gonna be taking it to Unity 5, but I want to still look at it. We will look at some day-night systems because we want to use it in our own game. This isn't using a day-night system currently. This is just a normal one-day thing, like it's just daylight. I know Unity's got a thing where you can set it so it rotates your camera for like your light, so you can have your shadows rotating and stuff like that. But yeah, we want to get a day-night system going again. Now that one that we had in there before, we'll have a look and see if we can't make it work ourselves with Unity 5, because it was very light. You know, it's people like Unistorm, and I mean Unistorm is a nice package too. I just find it, you know, the more stuff you add in that's heavy on your frames and stuff, you know, the harder it is gonna be for players to play it. So you want to keep it as light as possible. The other little thing that I do also is that I forgot to show you guys. Actually, maybe I'll just show it quickly here. It's let me just find it. So in the main camera, you can put bloom on. See, that changes it, but I don't like bloom. I wanted this area to look a little bit darkish and so on. These are little effects that you can have. Contrast enhancement, that's what I put in. This one is a really good one to have on. It costs a little bit of frames, but it's a really good anti-aliasing as post effect. So what it does, it makes your edges, if I turn this off, you see everything looks very crisp, like around the character and so on. It doesn't look nice at all. The trees and stuff. This makes all the edges look smooth and very good looking, right? Natural. And then another one I like putting in is vintage. If you don't put it on, you see everything around the edges is very white and bland, like it's got no atmosphere. So I put vintage on. It blurs. I blur the edges a little bit, and then I make it a little bit darkish. So you know, it has a bit of a darker as it comes in the center, right? And what else do I have here on? I had depth of view in here. So what it does, it just blurs the distance. So if you look very far, it blurs. That's a little bit blurred, which gives it also a nice natural look. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, if not, we might call this a wrap. We'll have some more information on atavism itself. I think in the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks one. Hopefully, Jean. Hope he feels better. He's out of hospital. So and we should have a 2.4 then, showing 2.4 totally, getting ready to release that. So yeah, exciting times. So I'll give you guys a few more minutes if you have any other questions. Otherwise, we'll call it a wrap. Okay, well, nice chatting with you guys. Looking forward to seeing what you guys make. Make sure to post them on the work in progress, because we love seeing all the games that's been made with atavism. It's very interesting to see it and run around in it. So thanks for coming, and talk to you guys again.